What's a secret you won't share with anyone in person but are willing to share anonymously? When I was young, I went over to my neighbor's house. I would usually go hang out with my adult neighbors because they would let me watch TV and give me snacks in exchange for helping them, to see if I could play with the foster puppies she had. Well, she wasn't there, but her door was unlocked and I just went in and played with the puppies. When I walked out of the house, she was coming down the driveway. There was a bunch of stuff in front of her door blocking it from view from the driveway. I just pretended like I had been waiting for a minute and we walked in and I got to play with the puppies again. Whew. I thought the worst and was pleasantly surprised by this dude's secret. Story 2. My mom treated me badly for my entire childhood by either being active in the mistreatment or being silent and allowing her boyfriend to do it. Fast forward to now and her mental health issues are taking a toll. She's an alky, substance dependent, and is crazy about gambling. When she calls me, it's like someone I don't even know. Last week she was in the hospital for a heart attack and I wish it would just be gone. I lost her when I was a kid. I feel like this other person is an imposter and I just want it to be gone, and for her, and I'm not gonna lie, my pain will end. I don't remember when the cruelty started, but my earliest memories of it occurring were very early. Here's a funny joke. What do someone who wears glasses and someone who has been treated badly from an early age have in common? They think how they see the world as normal. I never thought to question anything, ever, for many years. I was a quiet kid and didn't make many friends because people scared me. By the time I realized something was terribly wrong in my household, I refused to let the few friends I did have over. I have a very vivid memory of being small. I must have been around 4 because my younger brother was an infant. My mother has taken the 3 of us into one of the bedrooms and locked the door while her boyfriend smashed things downstairs and was just losing his mind. He had a cattle prod and I could hear the crackling of the electricity through the walls. My mom had wounds from it all over her arms. She asked me, a small child, if I would call the police if he broke in. I started crying and begged her to please not make me, that I would get in trouble and he would hurt me and I was scared. She asked me, "Do you want me gone?" Those words are so clear in my mind that I can still hear them perfectly. To this day, I have nightmares of having to call 911, not being able to speak or pushing the wrong buttons. It became worse. Every trip to the hospital was an accident. Every public outburst was treated as a parent having to wrangle an unruly young kid. I tried to run away in the winter. I packed some clothes in my little backpack and went out onto the ice of a river near our house. I laid down out in the middle in the cold and daydreamed. I was just watching the snowfall. I was nice and warm in my coat and multi-layered pants. My parents would never buy a snowsuit for me. But I went back. I was scared of what would happen to my mom. Her boyfriend always told me that if I ran away, he would end her and my brother and keep me alive so that I would have the memory. I stayed for a couple more years, but when he tried to harm me, I ran and started living at a friend's house. My mom would call constantly, begging me to come back. Things had gone so much worse for her, but I was too afraid and the guilt piled up. He ended up leaving when I was 18. I've not talked to him since. I consider the time I was around him like a terrible, horrible nightmare. My mother spiraled. What was once a functional alky turned into a complete mess. She turned to hustling to subsidize her dependents. She lived on the streets, and every time I moved and slowly got better, she would call and ask for money. I gave in to that for a long time. I was hospitalized and diagnosed with several mental disorders. She called me a malingerer and said that my pain was nothing in comparison to her own. I got married and had 2 wonderful children. She tells me my husband will leave because I'm crazy. My children will grow to be substance dependents and that I'm her clone, that I can't escape it. She's like a voice in my head berating me, while at the same time working her way back in like some sort of cruel spouse. When I listen to music intended for exes, it makes me think of her. Adele's Hello is about my mom for me. To everyone who has dealt with a similar situation, you're amazing. You're strong. You'll get through this. When I was young, every day was hell. I thought it would never end, but it did. It will get better. You just have to make it better. Story 3. Well, it's a secret my mom confided in my girlfriend, somehow not expecting her to tell me. I found out a month ago. It still has me messed up. My dad ended his life when I was very young, 2 days before Christmas. It always left me wondering why. I'm 24 now and just found out. My mom was cheating on him with my stepdad. She had also told him he would never see me again, so he did it at his place of work after hours because she didn't know where else to go. I always thought my middle name being my stepdad's first name was just a coincidence because I don't remember him coming into my life until a couple of years later. My mom found out she was pregnant with my little sister 3 days after my dad's passing. I've always resented my stepdad because he burned all my baby pictures with my dad in them and I never knew why. I look nothing like my stepdad and still haven't confronted my mom. Story 4. My fiancé passed away in a rollover accident about 1.5 years ago. I tried to follow. Nothing seemed worth it. I couldn't eat and I couldn't sleep. I sat outside my house and chain smoked while drinking whiskey for months and literally nothing else. I hated seeing people happy because I was half a person. I was incomplete and broken. And all these people were capable of smiling and I could do nothing but cry. Eventually I stopped crying. I could eat again. I stopped drinking so much, I cut back on smoking, and I stopped wanting to leave this life altogether. It took a long time. I looked like a shell of my former self. I was dangerously underweight, but now I'm healthy again. It hurts that he's gone, and I love him, and I miss him, but the fact that he passed away doesn't mean I have to. I decided I would do all of the things he wanted to do. It started that I was going to wait until after I finished getting a tattoo he always wanted and going to a show he bought tickets for. All of his memorial services and benefit concerts were over. By the time I did all of that, I didn't want to leave anymore. I wanted to make him proud. I wanted to live for him and keep going because that's what I would want him to do. It helps if you think about what they would want. Do they want you to be happy? If the answer is yes, you need to keep going through the days until you don't want to end all the suffering anymore. It's one step at a time. Damn, something is wrong with my eyes. They're bleaking or something. Story 5. Well, my wife knows this now, but I wouldn't tell another soul. A few years ago, my wife and I moved into our parents' place to save some money, so we were adjusting to living with our parents again. It was strange and uncomfortable. I woke up one morning and my stomach was acting up. I went to open the bedroom door and could hear my father-in-law getting ready to head out for work. I'm panicking, thinking, geez, I know this is going to be bad. I'm not going to take this mega dump so early on into our time living here. I need to devise a plan. I stayed in the bedroom, emptied the little bin we had in the corner, and took a dump into the bag that was placed in there. I wiped my bum with some tissues that happened to be on the side, stood up, and tied a knot in the bag. Now I'm getting ready for work with this bag by my feet. The next stage is to get rid of this thing. I can't do it in any of the bins here. Think, screw it, I'll take it out and find the nearest one I can see. I even questioned putting this bag in a neighbor's place if nobody sees it. I walked 15 minutes to work with a bag in my hoodie pocket until I could find a public bin to throw it in. Story 6. I spent 2 years of my life being violated by the guy across the street when I was younger. It probably started as a game of doctor or truth or dare or something like that. It wasn't until years later when I looked back and considered the fact that I was in elementary school and he was in high school that I realized what it was. It finally came to an end when my family moved away. He was good at all the grooming, saying things like it was natural and that I'd get in trouble if anyone found out. He'd show me videos and even get physical a few times. He locked me in a closet a few times. When I finally realized what was going on, probably years later, I knew I'd never tell anyone. I didn't want my parents to find out. They both had to work full-time. I got home from school at 3 and my mom at 5, and it normally happened in the hour and a half or so that they weren't home. I never wanted them to feel like it was their fault, so I'll take it to my grave. My spouse and best friends don't even know, and no one ever will. Man, that's kind of a big secret. I hope she does tell her husband eventually. These secrets are really worth taking to the grave with because they're so wild. If you want to watch more videos like this, simply hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Story 7. I'm the reason my cousin is mentally handicapped. We were the same age, and when we were young, our grandpa bought dirt bikes for us. Well, we decided to make our own trail in the woods and took the entire summer. I put this tree branch purposely at roughly head level, just so we could duck under it and it would look awesome. The branch was heavy, but I was able to sit it conveniently between 2 trees. He was more brave than me, so he went first. Being dumb kids, we didn't wear helmets. I yelled for him to duck, but he didn't and hit his head in the branch, got knocked backward and hit his head again. I told everyone it was an accident. Grandpa sold the dirt bikes, and I didn't see my cousin a whole lot after that. That was nearly 25 years ago. I see him every Christmas, and it's always the same, in a wheelchair being spoon-fed by his mom. He can't speak. He likes to draw funny shapes. He most likely doesn't remember the incident, and I don't know if he remembers me. But that's what haunts me. Story 8. My mom and her boyfriend hurt me and my 2 younger siblings, brother and sister, when we were very young. I noticed something wasn't right, but at a young age I didn't understand what was going on, and I thought it was normal. One day, a few days after my brother's birthday, she told me my brother was sick and that he needed to go to the hospital. I didn't think much about it and said my goodbyes as my mom dropped me off at my aunt's house on the way to the hospital. I arrived at my aunt's house and she bathed me, and me and my cousins played and watched television until it turned dark. Then something went wrong. We heard a knock on the door. I heard it and started after the door, thinking my mom was there with my baby brother. I was thinking he was okay and everything was fine. My aunt opened the door and started to cry. I tried to piece it all together before I realized there were 2 tall men at the door. Police officers. They picked me up and told me I had to go away. I remember screaming for my aunt and I didn't get to say goodbye. At the time, I didn't understand what was happening at all. I even thought maybe they were picking me up and taking me to my mother. We arrived at a place I cannot remember much about, where they fed me and took care of me that night until the sun came up. After I had woken up, it was off to another location. They were taking me to a foster home. I was living with a large family I didn't know, and it was all too scary for me. I stayed there for a few weeks until I was moved somewhere else. I waited in a room and I saw somebody I knew. My grandparents and my sister. My brother wasn't there. I began to worry that he was still sick. I got so excited still, and even more so after learning that they were taking me home. That's when they began to explain to me where I was and why all of this had happened. It was all too much for him. He wasn't sick. He passed away. The reason why I was taken away was simply because my mother and her boyfriend were charged with what they did to us, causing him to pass away. All this didn't faze me at the time since I was still just a child, but after the years, I started to blame myself for not being able to do anything about it, even though I was so young and couldn't possibly do so. Every year on his birthday, I go to where he was buried and put a flower on his grave. My aunt told me he loved yellow, so I always make sure to get yellow flowers and maybe a small toy I think he would like. And sometimes I wonder if he's up there, looking down on me, likes the fact that I still visit him every year. I hope this dude realizes it was never his fault, though. Story 9. My fiancée is the only person I actually enjoy being around. I don't really say that out loud because it puts unfair pressure on her and exposes my antisocial tendencies. I wasn't always this way. It kind of happened over the past 6 or 7 years after a deep depression and struggle with illegal substances. I've been happy and clean for several years, but I haven't been the same. When I make myself hang out with friends, I generally sit there thinking about how long I should stay before I can duck out and go home without looking like an a-hole. It's hard for me to have conversations with people because I just think things like, when are they going to leave me alone? Or when can I leave? I'm pretty good at hiding it and have several people who consider me to be their friend, but I secretly get no enjoyment out of those relationships. I'm not sure why my fiancée is different, but it makes me very afraid of losing her. I'm almost positive I won't find anyone else that I'll be able to love like I do her. There have been a few months here and there in the past where we split up and I went out on dates with several other women. Some of them were very pretty and very nice, but I absolutely hated the entire process and never followed through on the subsequent dates. I wish I could change that about myself, but I don't know how. Story 10. I'm a leader at my church. Volunteer, not paid, or making a career out of it. I used to teach Sunday school, but I still occasionally fill in if someone is sick. I went to a Christian college for a bit. I entered in New Testament Greek, married a Christian girl. We have kids who are growing up in our church. I can no longer bring myself to honestly believe in God. I wish I could, but it just doesn't make any sense. I only maintain the illusion of keeping faith because it would cause a lot of heartbreak to people who I really care about if they knew. It's like I lost a friend who I had for 34 years who I was super close to, was always there for me and who knew me better than anyone else. But I can't mourn this loss because my family and close friends still believe this friend is alive, and if I tell them I don't believe it, they'll feel like they lost me. Story 11. I feel terribly anxious all of the time, and the smallest thing set me into a panic. I feel paralyzed and scared. I don't know how to put it. It's like a mounting feeling of dread. I'm in therapy because it isn't helping. Some people have told me to consider changing therapists. I like my therapist, but I haven't talked to her about my anxiety per se. I began going to her because I found myself disgusting and I was deeply ashamed of who I was. It is difficult to articulate, but I have a lot of self-loathing. And I knew that it was totally irrational, but the shame was still there. Whenever I ate sweets, I imagined my stomach ballooning into a ball of fat and my cheeks getting puffy. Whenever I made a joke that fell flat, I could feel the contempt radiating off of the other people in the room. Whenever I took an extra Oreo, danced awkwardly, or failed an exam, I thought I could see the disgust in everyone's eyes and the sneers on everyone's lips. I thought that I wasn't a real person. I was only good enough to use as a large paperweight, a boat anchor, or a talking garbage disposal, eating everything in sight and making obnoxious and stupid comments. To top it off, I was ashamed of being ashamed because I knew that my shame was irrational, and this irrational fixation was embarrassing me. I wanted to punish myself to absolve myself of this shame. We've been making progress on some of this stuff. I don't hate myself as much, and we found out that a lot of the issues I have stem from bad parenting and loneliness. I wasn't a very social kid. I was tormented and ostracized a bit. I didn't have any friends, and I think that took a toll on me. Because of that, I became desperate for people to see and love me, and that is where the fear started, I think. But for some reason, I don't like the tightness in my chest and my sense of panic to anxiety. I also didn't like my self-loathing and panic together. I think that the anxiety comes from the pressure to be someone who is loved and respected, and the self-loathing comes when I have failed to live up to my, or other people's, expectations. I think this is why therapy hasn't been helping me the way it could. While I could articulate why I self-hate, I didn't know that the anxiety was at the root of it. So I could learn to love myself and get over my shame for a little bit, but those intrusive and panicky thoughts, that fear, would always wiggle their way back into my brain and I would be back to square one. Confronting my shame didn't mean that I was confronting my fear, if this makes any sense. And finally, my feeling of fear were never a condition for me. It was who I am. Being anxious was the default. It was normal. But I have recently realized that doing classwork shouldn't make me anxious to the point of tears. I shouldn't cry every time I take a test, and I shouldn't be panicking back and forth in the dorm basement at 2 a.m. because I am too scared to start my OChem homework, which is not normal. Now that I know about it, how would I explain it? How could I talk about this in a way that doesn't make me look crazy or weak? I hope that gives you a bit of perspective on why and how it is difficult to articulate this to myself. I think I have a lot more internalized issues to work out than I thought I did. Now I'll be talking to my therapist about medication. Story 12. I owned a 5-foot-tall doll while living with my grandparents and my mom. It was interesting ordering the doll and getting this big box weighing 80 pounds into the house with no one noticing. I had to go through the front door, through the hallway, and then into my room. Somehow I did it without anyone seeing. After owning her for about a week, it's a real chore trying to keep her clean with people around, so strategizing cleanup times in the bathroom sure is a chore. One time I had her in the bathtub to clean up and just took a shower so no one would question. Then I opened the bathroom door to see my grandma waiting to use it. I just had to pray she didn't open the shower curtains while doing her business, which she didn't. So a few months go by and some family needs to move in. I would now share my room with my brother and his girlfriend temporarily. I hid the doll in a big enough box inside my closet. No one knows I have this life-size doll and I would rather keep it that way. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy. What's a dirty company secret you want everyone to know? Story 4 is so funny. See you in that video.